It was a cold December evening in Atlanta, and the streets were quiet except for the occasional whisper of wind rustling through bare trees. An older woman, maybe in her early 60s, sat in a worn-out rocking chair on her small porch, wrapped in a thick shawl. Her name was Lillian Grace. She wasn't famous. She didn't have much. But that night, a knock on her door would remind her just how powerful one act of love can be. 25 years ago, Lillian was a newlywed social worker in her mid-30s, living in the rougher part of the city. The job didn't pay much, but she believed in it, believed that helping people, especially children, was worth every struggle. She and her husband, Derek, lived in a modest duplex and barely had enough to furnish it, but they were content. What mattered to Lillian more than comfort was compassion. It was in the dead of winter, much like this one, that she first met him. The boy. She had received an anonymous call one night. Someone claiming to hear screaming and crying from a neighboring house. Lillian didn't wait. She threw on her coat and headed straight to the address, even though it was outside her jurisdiction. Some people might have reported it and let others handle it, but Lillian couldn't do that. Her gut told her this was urgent. The house was dark when she arrived. Run down. The front yard was littered with broken toys and trash. She knocked. Nothing. Then she knocked again, louder. A shadow passed by a window, and suddenly, the door creaked open just a few inches. A pale-faced little boy with bruises beneath his eyes and fear etched deep into his expression peered out. He couldn't have been more than 6. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" Lillian asked gently. He didn't speak. He just looked at her like he didn't know if she was real. Then a voice shouted from inside, crude and drunk. "Get away from that door, boy." Before the door could slam, Lillian stepped forward and wedged her foot in. "This is Lillian Grace. I'm a licensed social worker, and I need to speak with you," she announced, her voice steady but firm. There was silence. Then loud, stomping footsteps. A man reeking of alcohol and rage appeared. He was huge, towering over Lillian, but she didn't flinch. She stood her ground, demanded to see the child's living conditions, and when he tried to shove her out, she called the police from her cell phone right there on the porch. By the time officers arrived, she had the boy wrapped in her coat, sitting on the curb beside her. His name was Marcus. He had no mother. She had passed when he was 2, and his father, a man broken by drugs and anger, had raised him with fists instead of love. That night, Lillian brought Marcus home with her. Not just for a few hours. Not just until a caseworker could be assigned. She took him in and never let go. The next months were hard. Legally, emotionally, financially. Lillian and Derek went through court hearings, background checks, endless paperwork. Derek had to take on a second job. They sacrificed vacations, new clothes, even skipped meals sometimes. But never, not once, did they consider giving up. Marcus was worth it. And Marcus, he was special. Quiet, deeply sensitive, but full of unspoken dreams. Lillian saw how he flinched when she reached out to hug him and how he cried silently at night. She spent hours with him, helping him rebuild his sense of safety. She'd kneel by his bed and whisper, "You're safe now. You're loved. And no one will ever hurt you again." Over time, he started to believe her. Years passed. Marcus flourished. He started doing well in school. He made friends. He joined track and field. Derek built him a small reading nook in their living room, and Lillian bought him books every chance she could. They became a family. Not by blood, but by love, choice, and resilience. Then came the day Marcus got a scholarship to college, pre-med. Lillian cried so hard she couldn't breathe. He was the first in his entire lineage to go to college. On the day he left, he hugged her tightly and whispered, "I'll come back for you. You changed my life. I'll never forget." Years went by. Lillian aged. Derek passed away from heart failure, and the house felt unbearably quiet after that. She retired from social work and lived off a small pension and Social Security. Her hair turned white. Her knees ached. But she still went to the porch every evening, sat in that same rocking chair, and looked down the street. She never said it out loud, but part of her hoped. Hoped to see Marcus again. And that brings us to now. That December night, she had just dozed off in her chair when she heard a knock, 3 slow, steady taps on the door. She blinked, confused. Visitors were rare these days. She stood up with effort and opened it slowly. There stood a tall man in a dark overcoat. Clean-shaven, warm eyes, and unmistakably familiar. "Miss Grace?" he asked softly. Lillian's hands went to her mouth. "Marcus?" Her voice cracked, a tremble overtaking her. He stepped forward, smiling gently. "It's me. I told you I'd come back." They embraced. She sobbed into his coat, clinging to him as though time hadn't passed. "You look just like your mother," she whispered, overwhelmed. Marcus came inside, carrying something heavy in a duffel bag. He sat her down, made her tea, and told her everything, how he'd finished med school, how he was now a pediatric surgeon at a major hospital in Chicago, how every day he thought of her. How he'd never forgotten the night she stood on that broken porch and saved him. "I owe you everything," he said, taking her hand. "And I came to repay that kindness." He reached into his bag and pulled out a thick folder. Inside were documents, a deed, a bank statement, and a set of keys. He'd bought her a new house in a quiet neighborhood, close to parks and community centers. Paid off. Renovated. Comfortable. And he'd hired a full-time nurse to help her with daily tasks. "I want you to live the rest of your life in peace," Marcus said, voice breaking. "You gave me my life. Now I want to give you yours back." Lillian stared at him, speechless, tears falling freely. "I never expected anything," she whispered. "I just wanted you to be safe. To be happy." "And I am," he replied. "Because of you." That night, she packed a small bag. Marcus helped her into his car, and as they drove away from the old house, Lillian looked back one last time, not with sadness, but with gratitude. The past hadn't been easy. There was pain, sacrifice, loss. But love had endured. And in the end, it came full circle. Because kindness, when given without expectation, has a way of finding its way back home.